Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. It's always a pleasure to be doing a webinar with GMAT Club. We welcome you here today. Before we get started about this webinar that is going to discuss COVID-19 and how that might affect your MBA plans, we at MBA Admit wanted to extend our condolences to anyone who has been affected by this disease, and especially those who have lost loved ones. We recognize that for some people, this pandemic has upended some of your plans to apply to business school, and you have questions and uncertainty about what your next steps should be. So we hope that today's webinar will shed some light on steps that you can take. Let's try to see. My screen is not advancing. Give us 1 second to get this technology working for us. Just 1 second here. There we go. All right, so today's discussion is about COVID-19 and its impact on MBA and EMBA admissions. Before I get into today's discussion, I just want to talk briefly about our company. We've been offering advising for over 33 years. I am the lead consultant, Shelley Leanne Watts, and we at MBA Admit do have deep experience both with MBA and EMBA applications. We've been offering these services well before the most recent recessions, so we've seen the impact of recessions on admissions, and we're happy to talk to you today about things to consider. Here's a list of some of the schools that we've worked with, and we've had great success. And we're welcoming all of you to come to our website. If you'd like to get our specific information and feedback about your candidacy, you can go to our homepage and send an email either to info@mbaadmit.com or fill out our profile evaluation form on the website. So let's talk about some of the context. I think most people are familiar with this pandemic. The viral disease caused by the novel coronavirus emerged in Wuhan, China in late 2019. As of this morning, unfortunately, it is a pandemic affecting approximately 200 countries with nearly 625,000 confirmed cases and nearly 29,000 deaths. Health officials are warning that this spread is accelerating in terms of the virus, and that cases in most countries have not yet peaked, which means that the worst is likely still to come. Because it's a very highly contagious disease, many governments around the world have adopted certain preventative measures and measures to try to stem the spread, and that includes banning gatherings of over a certain number of people, such as 10 people, mandated quarantines, shelter-in-place orders, travel bans, and the closing of country borders. All of this is affecting candidates in terms of their ability to go see schools, go to information sessions, do research, and so forth. So you are being impacted. Even the testing is being deferred or delayed or canceled. And so we're going to talk today about what that means for you and how to move forward. So responses that you're seeing, universities all over the world are sending home all their students. Most of them have already done that, and they've closed their campuses. Existing MBA and EMBA programs have shifted to all online or virtual teaching. Testing centers have closed or canceled the testing dates. That's GMAT, EA, and GRE. Visiting schools is not possible because they're closed or you're facing travel bans. In-person admission events have been canceled, and in-person admissions interviews have also been canceled. And so the question for you, of course, is how do I proceed? Do I try to apply now or do I wait until next year? This is the summary of exactly what you are facing. So again, you can't complete in-depth research by going to the schools. You can't take standardized tests. For those of you who actually have done that and have good scores, that doesn't apply to you, but many of you were about to take the exam and the exam was canceled. And so you're kind of wondering what you should do. And then also you're just wondering with all this uncertainty, should you apply now or wait until the fall? So again, we're going to talk you through some facts and considerations that you should bear in mind. The first thing to note is that the top business schools are making adjustments. So some of them have extended their round 3 or final deadlines, and so they've pushed them out to April, May, June. Some of them are actually adding additional rounds to their cycles. For many of them, that will be a round 4. Some of them are extending the time that you have to take a standardized test because they understand that some of the dates were canceled. Some of them are putting in place in-person admissions interviews. So rather, instead of in-person, they're having the video or the video chats. And so you can proceed, you'll just have an interview that's not in person. And then finally, some of them are putting in place admissions events that are webinar style or video chat. So again, they're basically taking everything online. So they're making adjustments for you, and you are able to take advantage of some of that for those of you who are thinking very seriously about still trying to apply this year. Here are some examples of specific adjustments that have been made. So Chicago Booth, it has extended the time that you have to submit a standardized test. It has also added an extended round 3 that will be a rolling admissions cycle after April 4th. Columbia Business School has extended its deadline to June 1st. It has also said that you can turn in your test scores as late as July 1st. Harvard has extended the 2+2 deadline to June 1st. Kellogg is saying that you may proceed without a standardized test exam. It is still required, but they understand that some people will not have it in hand by the deadline because the testing was canceled. NYU Stern has extended the March deadline to May 1st. Dartmouth Tuck has added a round 4, which will be a rolling admissions, April through June. Haas has added a new deadline of May 4th, and Wharton has extended its round 3 deadline to April 15th. Now, things are constantly changing in these circumstances, so make sure to go to the websites periodically and check to see that all of this information, which is valid as of this morning, is still in place, and that further adjustments have not yet been made. Additional adjustments have been made by the test administrators. So they're offering standardized tests at home, which is really unprecedented. So you have the ETS, which is responsible for the GRE. It is saying that you can take the GRE at home. There are certain requirements that have to be in place, and it's only offered in certain countries so far. But of course, they're going to be trying to expand that. And the same with the GMAC. They're the makers of both the EA and the GMAT. And they are trying to get something in place as soon as they can. They're aiming for mid-April. And again, it's a sort of testing at home option. They're saying that it won't be exactly the same as the GMAT, but that it will be a similar structure. And again, they're aiming for the GMAT equivalent to be in place in mid-April. Let's see if I can get back to that screen. So make sure to check with those websites to see what is going on, if more countries have access to this home testing, and also to get more information about the GMAT equivalent, because as you see here, they have said on the GMAT website that it will be an online proctored alternative to the GMAT exam. So it's sounding like it's not exactly the GMAT exam, but something very similar. You're going to want to get more details about that. But do find out about all of that, and understand that the schools realize that this is a big obstacle for some students and some applicants. And so they will work with you. They do want to still have great admissions opportunities for candidates. They do want to still get great applications. So one question people have as they're looking at all of this, what they consider a little bit of chaos, they're asking, should I apply right now when things are so kind of chaotic and in the air and fluid, or should I just wait to round 1? There are some considerations you should bear in mind as you're thinking that through. So the first thing to think about is round 3. Many of you have heard is a very hard time to be applying for most schools because they've gone through 2 rounds, they've already admitted quite a number of students, and so you're competing for a lesser number of seats. But this year will likely be very unusual, atypical, because you're going to probably have a larger number of candidates than typical requesting deferrals. Now, historically, the schools don't necessarily give deferrals. This year will probably be very different because there's a valid reason to have a deferral if you cannot travel to a country to attend the classes. So there is very likely going to be a case where candidates that were admitted in round 1 and round 2 are not able to come, which means that the school needs to fill the seats still. And so there probably will be higher admissions opportunities and odds in round 3 than is typical this year. And then also when you think about it in terms of round 1, if you are thinking about waiting, many people do expect that the economy around the world is going to go into a recession. And so if a recession does occur, or if many candidates end up losing their jobs, many professionals end up losing their jobs, many people will start to look at business school because it gives them a way to do something, make sure that there's not a gap on their resumes. And so the impact is that the numbers typically surge. So in the fall, it will not be surprising if we see a large number of applicants because people have lost their jobs. And so they're flooding back to school. So in that way, round 1 may be very competitive. It may be a very hyper competitive year, which may mean that applying now is actually a better thing to consider doing. Another question that people will have is, okay, so what if I mobilize everything and try to submit now in round 3? And then as it turns out, I don't get in and it was largely due to timing. Will I be hurt if I reapply later? The answer is no, because if it is mostly a function of timing, the schools will look at you with open eyes. And if you apply early, they'll be reconsidering you again with open eyes and without bias. And usually if you fix the timing, then you will have a better outcome. So I do want to, sort of emphasize 2 of those points I just went over, because for those of us who have been around in admissions for decades, a couple decades, we've seen both the burst of the internet bubble and the recession of 2007 and 8. And so I've been doing this sort of advising through all of that period. And the volume difference is so huge, I can't quite put that into words, that it just went off the charts during those periods of the burst of the internet bubble and the recession. And so the volume is so high that what it means is that very qualified candidates will have a harder time getting into the very top schools. And so I always say that the best thing a candidate can do is apply when the economy is good, because the volume of applications will be lower because people don't want to leave good jobs. The worst thing, of course, is to apply when the economy is in a free fall or is tanking, because again, people will try to flood the schools if they think that they're about to lose their job, because they just don't want a gap on their resumes. So bear in mind that round 1 may be very, very intense. And then again, to re-emphasize this part, again, I know a lot of people do fear round 3. They're nervous about round 3. But in our experience, the schools will always look at a candidate with open eyes as long as they fix the problem. So if someone applies and they didn't have a good GMAT score, and they apply the very next year and the GMAT score is fixed, the school looks at them with open eyes and typically they can get a different outcome. The same is true for timing. So if you apply in round 3, feeling like, again, some of you may feel like you're about to lose your job, and so you want to do that now, and you feel like you're going to put it together quickly, and you're concerned about the round 3 timing. If it turns out that the timing was the main factor why you did not get in and you reapply in round 1, there should not be a bias against you, and because the timing was the issue and you're fixing the issue. So rating to round 1, again, I can't overemphasize that regardless if you're going to wait to round 1, you should be putting the next few months to really good use, and you should be assuming that there's a good chance that round 1 will be very competitive. So in the months that you have between now and then, you should be seeking to enhance your credentials, professional successes, academic successes, your experiences extracurricularly as a leader and in activities. You want to cultivate strong relationships with recommendation writers so that your recommendations will be very strong. The recommendations will be very important in a very competitive time period, if that pool does tend to be very, very competitive and a lot of applications. And again, you want to, especially if it is a hyper competitive cycle in round one, you want to make sure that you really assess your candidacy well, understand where you're strong, understand what is a reach school, and then time it as well as you can in terms of your submissions. Regardless of whether you're applying now or whether you're applying in the fall, just remember that even though there are quarantines and other challenges because of COVID-19, there's still plenty of ways to engage with the school, and the school is going to make sure that you can get the information to really understand their curriculums and what they have to offer, so you can show that it is the right program for you and that you'll fit there. And so take advantage of all those things that you don't need to be doing in person. You can attend webinars, you can attend online or virtual information sessions, you can read admissions blogs and student blogs. You can have discussions via phone, Skype, or other video chat with alumni members or student club heads, even other current students. You can do that, again, via phone or Skype. And you can also be in touch with the admissions office. So they want you to still be able to engage the school, and you should definitely be doing that. You want to show that you did more than just read the basic information on the website. Now, for those of you who are waitlisted, that's also another situation that is affected by COVID-19. Some of you applied in round one and got waitlisted, and some of you applied in round two and were waitlisted before the pandemic really kind of showed how extensive the impact would be. And so the admissions committee may have made those decisions expecting the typical matriculation percentages. Now that some of the admitted students may not be able to attend because they're in countries where they just can't travel, or maybe some Americans at American schools, they won't be going because they've lost somebody to the pandemic and it's not the right time personally. It just means that the matriculation percentage will not be as high. They will have more seats they want to fill. And so most likely they will turn to the wait list and admit more people than is typical. So if you are on the wait list, you should be being very active. Now, unless the school says not to turn in additional information, you should actually be doing additional things, what we call the waitlist strategy, to try to get yourself off of the wait list. What are some of those elements for a successful waitlist strategy? It can be writing a letter or a short essay to restate why the school is ideal for you and what you have to offer. Getting an additional recommendation or two can be useful. Deepening your credentials, and then making sure that you're informing the admissions committee of those changes, like increased work responsibilities, new training that you've had, additional certifications that you've earned, new extracurricular activities. When there are changes, be sure to let them know, because that can weigh in as a factor. And then continue to engage the school. The schools do like to see, if you're on the wait list, that you're continuing to reach out, to attend webinars, to speak to students or alumni members. And then also, if your test score was an issue, then try to improve it, assuming that you'll have an opportunity to retake the test sometime in the next few months. We welcome you to reach out to us. I am going to go into a Q&A in just a moment. But again, we do invite you to reach out to us, and if you'd like to hear our perspective on your candidacy and whether you might be strong in round three, whether you should consider waiting, if you want to start to develop a strategy for putting the months to use if you're going to wait to round one, you just feel free to reach out to us. This is our information. Thank you for being here today. I'm actually going to loop out of this screen show to see your questions and answer some of those. All right, so I think we're okay here. I think the GMAT Club host will let me know if something's not as it should be. But right now, I think you can still hear me, and I'm going to start to answer some of the questions that you've been putting through. So let's take a look. Let's see some questions. Okay. Which MBA course is best to choose at this time? If you can actually, I need more information around that question. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. If someone can clarify that, great. But let me just try to answer what might be your question, which is, are you asking, is it EMBA or full-time MBA? That's really going to be that really doesn't change based on pandemics. So if you're considering executive MBA, you do need to have a certain number of work experience years to look or to be attractive. That can range from 4 to 5 years at some school to over 8 at other schools. And so for you, the executive MBA might be ideal if you're in that time frame. And then other candidates, full-time is good. And again, many candidates who are nervous about losing their jobs will want the full-time because it allows them to get fully into school. Even if you have to take loans, those loans will cover living expenses. So you don't have the pressure of bringing in an income. So it just depends on your circumstances and how many years you've actually been working. Okay, so here's a question about someone admitted to UNC and Kelly. One of those costs more than the other, and they're questioning, should they change their choice based on the recession and the desire to save money? Now, I have to admit I am biased with regard to this because I put a great amount of weight on the pedigree and the title of the degrees that I got. So, I wanted to get the best school, so I got Harvard and Oxford. And so name means a lot to me. And I think that the long-term gain is worth any short-term sacrifice. So I would tend to look at that decision and not let a short-term recession impact what will be a longer-term decision, because the school that you go to is going to brand you, and it's going to brand you for life. And then there's also the curriculum. Is it more ideal for what you're seeking? And so if the answer is that one school is a better brand and one also has a better curriculum for you, I think that it's better to take any short-term sacrifice for that and get the degree that's going to work for you best in the longer term. Okay, so here's a question about, how did candidates graduating 1 year post-recession fare in employment? When you're graduating from a top university, there's really not a huge problem in terms of getting a job. So one way you can actually answer that more concretely is to look for the school that you're interested in and go to their job employment report for that year. So go back to the recession years and take a look, and you'll see like how many candidates or how many students didn't have jobs upon graduation. And you'll also see where they were placing students. And so you can actually get hard data to answer that question. But, I think people at the college level have a much harder time getting jobs than people at the MBA level. So I would expect that you'll be fine. Okay, another question. Well, okay, so the question here is, will applicants have a harder time gaining admission next year? No one can foresee the future. So, everyone hopes that this pandemic will go away and will be under control by the summer. And so things will be normalized by the fall and the economy rebounds in all countries. That will be a wonderful scenario. But there's also the possibility that this goes through the summer. We don't know much about the virus and whether it stays alive in hot weather. And so it could go through the summer and things are still not back to normal in the fall. If things are normalized and the economies have come back, it should be most likely a regular admission cycle. If people have lost their jobs and the recession is getting worse in the fall, then it's going to be a much more competitive year. So as many people say, you should probably prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so if you are going to wait until round one, you should probably get a really good assessment of your profile, look at the ways that you should best build up, and really make some good choices in the next few months about where to invest your time to build up the record that will serve you best in a very competitive round one. Well, yes. Does MBA admit work with PhD applicants? If you're talking about two MBA programs, yes, even also to some finance programs. So you can just reach me at the website if you would like more information about that. Let's see any other questions. Okay, how are the European schools going to be affected by the pandemic? I think that any country where a school is located, so Oxford, INSEAD, those schools, the countries where they are, if they are being affected by the pandemic, and they are right now, it'll be the same thing. Right now, the schools are shut down, and the testing is not happening in terms of GMAT and EA and GRE. And so it's the same thing where the teaching has gone online at most schools. And there may be hesitation for people right now applying because they just don't know whether they should apply right now. And so the schools will be reaching out to more students, admitting people later than is typical. And if those economies don't rebound by round one, then again, it could be a very much more competitive round one for those schools as well. Okay, so the question is the 1 year full-time European MBA a good option? I don't know which ones you're referring to. You could be meaning INSEAD, for instance, and there are also some full-time EMBA type equivalents as well. And so, it gives you less time to ride out a recession. And so there might be the issue of, job placement at the end of it. But there's many reasons why people will take INSEAD even in a good economy. It's a great school. And so I think that those are good options. I would expect that there may still be uncertainty after graduating from a 1 year program as opposed to 2 years. It could have much more calmed down by then. But as I said, most of the schools don't have huge problems with placement of students, even in recessions. Okay, I'm looking for any other questions. I'll probably take about 2 more questions. So I know that one question that I've received at my website is about testing, because some of you were preparing for the GMAT and you had your test date scheduled, and then 2 days or 3 days before it was canceled, and now you don't know when you're going to have that opportunity. It might be a month or 2 months from now. And so some people have asked, will the committee understand if you don't perform as well, because you're going to get a little bit rusty between now and then? I would tend to say try to stay brushed up, because while they may be somewhat understanding, you want to put your best foot forward. So just try to keep brushed up, keep practicing. Some people will have home options, and so that might come sooner than the regular testing environment. But do your best to stay brushed up. And on the whole, this is kind of new territory for most of the schools. I mean, this is the first time an infectious disease has caused this sort of impact to MBA and EMBA admissions. And so everyone will be flexible. Schools want really great candidates. And so they're going to try not to let circumstances that are unusual keep them from recruiting and bringing in great candidates. All right, well, it looks like that may be for now the questions that I will be answering. If you have any other questions, feel free to post those here, and I will come back, time to time and respond. Also, definitely give us a like if you liked this webinar. Again, we invite you to come to our website, and if you want specific feedback about your candidacy and when you might consider applying round 3 or round 4 or in the fall, we're more than happy to give you that feedback. So thanks again for being with us, and thank you again to the GMAT Club for hosting this session, and best of luck to everyone. Stay safe among this pandemic. Best wishes to you and your families, and good luck in the admissions process.